I don't think this is live, but it is, I guess, my first real. Here we go. The next series of videos that I intend to do, my name is Steve Ball. The next series of videos that I intend to do, I intend to focus on family law, the courts. I want to talk about some issues myself that I've dealt with, not only myself, but others that I know have dealt with. I want to talk about, a clear and recognized injustice within our courts, and not just here in Washington State where I live, or one or two counties in the state where I live. I'm talking about our entire nation as a whole. And it's pretty interesting that it has to be mentioned that we have an entire legal justice department, our legal system, our justice department, our legislative branch, even our executive branch is turning a blind eye and they're doing it on purpose. We're talking about, Representative Larry Haler here in Washington State, Sharon Brown. We're talking about Graham. The list goes on. Name it. Why are they turning a blind eye to the abuse that men, and some women, but men receive inside of Washington State's family courts? It's disgusting, it's abhorrent, it's putrid, and I would love to have words with any Superior Court judge sitting on the bench right now. In my opinion, a family court judge isn't worth his salt if he pushes a child support order before a parenting plan. These have to be done in unison, simultaneously at the same time. Matter of fact, I would argue that a child support payment would never be made if there's no active parenting plan in the court. Without the benefit of the parenting plan, all we're doing is crippling one of the parents. So I'm ordered to pay child support. That money has to, and it's inarguable, and I've heard argue. Let me tell you what the child support is. Supporting the child. It's not the freeway. All right. Let's pretend that this controller here is a beam to a bridge. Okay. I'm going to build my bridge on top of this beam. I didn't say I was going to build the whole bridge. I said I'm going to build the beam. That's all your child support is. It's the beam. It's support. It's not a free ride. You're not supporting your children. You are abusing your children when you're taking the money that the other parent would use to have an activity with the child. And then you sit there and say, well, he's a deadbeat, he's not involved. And that's true. There are some guys that are complete deadbeats and they're not involved and they're not going to be involved. And those are really unfortunate circumstances, and those are the types of cases that support enforcement should be geared for. This blanket statement, you will make $500 a month, or we're going to throw you in jail, suspend your license, take your freedom away, before you even have a parenting plan filed with the court. Are you serious? Are you serious right now? I could take that money, that $500 a month, and then they say, well, she has to have a place to live, and so do I. And so do I. I have to have a place to take the kids when I get them, right? Or am I supposed to live in my truck? What's the deal here? You can't have your cake and eat it too. And for far too long, some of these ladies have had their cake and they've eaten it too. And I'm sorry, ladies. I would rather have a guy remotely spend a little bit of time or remotely be involved with his children than not be involved at all. You go to court, these judges, they handle this guy like he's some kind of a criminal or whatever, and some of them are. Some of the dudes you women are marrying are 2 or 3 time convicted felon, never worked a day in his life, never had a job, didn't know how to file a tax return, or never had money to file a tax return with. If you're having kids with these kinds of guys coming out of high school, coming out of college, you got what you deserve. You honestly knew, this guy, but I'm going to change him. No, you're not. So that's a moot argument. I'm not going to hear that crap. You were going to have a place to live in your life at some point or another anyway. Or were you going to choose to be on the street without a baby and child support? So those are decisions that, that are not up for the court to decide. And here we are watching the court make these decisions for these people, and it's disgusting, and it's putrid, and it's horrible, and it's abhorrent. What right does a court have to tell me how much money I'm going to make per month? What right does a court have to dictate, before I've ever made that money, to dictate how much I will make? What right does a court have to tell you? So, most of these cases go, as they start, relationships start off pretty good. Everybody loves each other, this, that, and the other. But as time goes by, eventually things regress and it deteriorates and becomes toxic, and it's terrible. Now, usually what happens is a restraining order. That's like the first thing that happens. So we get our restraining order, walk into court, and the judge says, you can't have contact with your wife, spouse, girlfriend, ex, okay. You can't have contact with the kids, blah, 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 blah. All right. Now, right there, the problem is, and it's been stated by more people than just me, the problem is that we've created an adversarial system and not one that's truly the benefit of the child. Now, in the cases of an actual arrest with an actual conviction of domestic violence, yeah, sure, I'll look at that and say, hey, something terrible happened, the police arrived, the police conducted an investigation, and the police had, PC to charge you with the crime and arrest you. Whether I agree with it or not, I'll look at that. What I don't want to look at is much like what happened with me. Well, I'm afraid of him. He scares me. Okay, why? Because I'm just afraid of him. Well, I mean, in my case, there was a litany of things that got said, and ultimately the judges, he leaned, she was able to lean the judge's decision, and so they granted this restraining order that did nothing but keep me away and allow her to alienate my child. And still to this day, my child is very much alienated from me, believes that I abused her, believes that I abused her mother. I was never given an opportunity to not only defend myself or my actions, but also to grow up, to change. No judge ever held her to a higher standard. Oh, honey, you're just a victim of domestic violence. Says who? Says who? For some people, domestic violence is name-calling. For other people, it's not domestic violence until they're using boards, So, who is it that describes what domestic violence is? And then when that question gets asked or answered, I think another question right behind it is key. With a restraining order, I'm afraid of him, or in some cases, I'm afraid of her. After a year or two, or maybe even 3 years, I'm still afraid of him. I'm still afraid of her. Okay, Johnny Susie. Is it my responsibility to be in charge of your phobia? To be in charge of something? Can I control your phobia? These are things that I want to talk about. I want to discuss it in great length and detail. If I knew how to make this go live, I would, but I don't. And we haven't even begun the tip of the iceberg. So we've got a long way to go. I want subscribers, I want viewers, I want comments, I want insight. It's time, and you know what? I'm talking about exposing judges and commissioners like Edward Harmon in Pierce County. I have no problem dropping his name. Edward Harmon in Pierce County is probably the most abhorrent and horrible judge that's ever sat on a bench in Washington State. This guy needs to be removed immediately, because what he is served to do, and I've seen multiple cases where he's ruled on, all this guy is served to do is destroy Washington's families. Every time he puts the gavel down, with his own emotion, and that's terrible. You can't have that in a judge. He fails to read cases. He refuses to read cases, as a matter of fact. And this is not the kind of law and order that our state and our country needs. We need judges that read motions. We need judges that interact with families. We need judges to understand that there's two sides to every story, and at the end of the day, that everybody's going to suffer. We need judges to realize that to minimize the impacts, we need the children not to suffer. And I don't think Edward Harmon has any clue about suffrage or suffering children. I think that guys like Edward Harmon should be removed from the bench. We should be allowed to take our judges to public scrutiny. And in Washington State, we're just not able to, and that's absolutely terrible. We can take council members, we can take other elected officials, but when it comes to commissioners, when it comes to judges, they're truly immune. And that's disgusting. I should be able to drag this judge out to a public forum and rag him over the coals over the things that he said to me in this court. And I should be able to bring him before a panel. And after 2 or 3 people, or 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 cases, drag him over that same panel, he should be removed. I mean, we've got to be able to establish that this judge is bad for our courts, or judges like him are bad for our courts. And right now we have nothing. We have no protection. Oh, you can go get a guardian ad litem, or you can go get a lawyer. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about getting a lawyer. So, restraining order just got filed. You're removed from your children. You can't pick up a lawyer for under $5,000 or $10,000. The average person going through this situation makes $12, $13, $20 an hour. So right there, second mortgage on the house, losing the car. We're already cutting into maybe education costs for elementary school or junior high or high school age children. So that lawyer is going to hurt. That's going to hurt bad. That's going to hurt the entire family unit. Even though the family unit is dissolving, that lawyer, he's going to rag you and your family over the coals. Let's say you both get 2. So now we go from $30,000, and that's nominal, to $100,000. Both of you guys get lawyers. That includes $50 grand a piece for your lawyer. That includes all your filing fees. That includes your paperwork, your copies, all that stuff. So it's a racket. Now we've created a racket, and now we've got a judge that we can convince. Dad must have supervised visitation with the children for XYZ, must be a professional supervisor. Okay. You get into the books and start looking at how much they want for a professional supervisor, and we start talking about, $100 or maybe, $50, $80, $100, and then you get your upscale, professional supervisors. These guys can go as much as $300 an hour. And that's the extreme on the high side, $300 an hour. Now, the low scale, they may or may not write a report, they may or may not go to court, you may or may not get an email from them, those are $25, $30 an hour. Again, this is not conducive, in most cases, to, the wholesome family unit. This is a racket, it's hurting families, it's hurting fathers, it's hurting children. They want to talk about why there's so much crime with our young people and why our young people are so wayward. It's because the rock, the family, the father is out of the house. It's out of the family. And why should some of these women go to work? Why should some of these women do anything less than what they've been doing for the last 25 years? I'll have my baby, I'll get my child support, he'll be out the house, and I'll get my DSHS, and why do I have to go to work? Look, it's true. It is absolutely true, and it's disgusting, and some of you are going to be upset that I just said that in that way. And you know what? You should be upset. You should be like, why are you having children? You can't pay for it. We understand maybe 1 or 2, but 4 and 5 and 6 kids, and you're on the system, and you're on the system, and you're on. It's time to look at the situation. Maybe it's time to offer, free vasectomies and hysterectomies. I would really love to see medical science come out with a male birth control. I think that would help a lot. I would really like our politicians to redefine the rights and responsibilities of men. You get pregnant, you also have a right to have an abortion. Whether I agree with it or not, it doesn't matter. It's inconsequential. You have the option to have an abortion. That's it. But you're going to shove a kid down on my throat that I maybe didn't want. Now, I'm not saying that I am for abortion, but this is the argument. We're part of the argument. So I may have agreed to engage in a sexual relationship. That does not mean that I agreed with having a child and owing you right out of the bag $100,000. That's lock, stock, and barrel. And that's roughly what they want. You know, the average case walking out of a child support case right now is about $100,000 in child support. Whether you paying that money every month, but that's what from zero to 20, and because of wonderful Obama, it's now 26. Well, that's not true. I mean, 18 are graduation in most states, but Obama passed some legislation here not too long ago to try to push it to 26. I don't know if Congress ever went with it, but it was completely repugnant. At some point, young people are just on their own. You're on your own. And you know what? If you want to be a parent and you want to continue to give to your child and help your child, you know, as they're coming into their 20s, well, then so be it. That's great. That's a great plan. And you know what? That's really the kindness of your heart. But for some of you guys, you know, you have wayward teenagers. You know, they're involved, you know, having sex, doing drugs, skipping school. The list goes on. So why would we reward these young people when they become young adults, you know, for, you know, choosing to live a lifestyle that we know is damaging, degrading, and ultimately it's going to lead our young people in a dangerous direction. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off right here and get your guys' reactions and see where we go in the near future. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys in a little bit.